Hello, I'm back again, literally immediately. I've just made a video on casting off with a crochet hook, having knitted all that. And in this little video, I want to show how after I've cast on and made one row with the needles, I will be increasing with the crochet hook. I'm using ADDI Lace and Basic. Not the grey ones. The grey ones are just ADDI Basics. These ones here are ADDI Lace and Basics, and they have a lace tip and they have a basic tip, and I love them for small work. I have these guys, but I do not have a size 2.5, unfortunately. So I went onto eBay. I've been looking around for it. They're actually all over the internet, but they're very hard to find unless you know exactly what you're looking for. It's called ADDI DUETT, double T, okay? And you buy them individually. I just put them all into the same bag. And they have a crochet hook on one point, and they have a knitting needle on the other. So I'm going to be crocheting Tunisian style, which means I'll be increasing, and they will all be on here, and then I have to push them over that, and I have to push them all the way down there and take them off. Whereas with this, I wouldn't have to do that. And even better, if I was changing colors, I wouldn't even have to push them off. I could immediately start my new color with that. So I'm going to be ordering, because this one over here is a 2. I'm going to be ordering a 2.5, and then I'm going to try it. And then what I could do is little black feet, and then start the next color. So I wouldn't even have to push them off my ADDI Duetts. But I don't have them for now, so I'm just going to have to make do with the crochet hook. My pattern calls for 18 stitches to be cast on. I'm stretching this all the way as long as my arm, because I need some yarn to sew it up afterwards. I do a 2 needle cast on. I like the edge that it gives me. I wrap to the back, 2 needles, close it nicely. I do not work with this one at the back. This one has to be at the front. So I will just swap them over, and I'll put the long thread at the back. And then this is how I cast on. I have my yarn. How do I do it? Okay, I have my yarn basically pinched. Both yarns are pinched with my baby finger, and then my thumb and this one go into the gap and open it. So you pinch your yarn like that, go in there and in there. Whoops, my baby finger. Strange when you have to demonstrate something that you've done so many times. So pinch it first, and it automatically seems to just find its place. Sorry, it's the same color as my hand, so it's not easy to see. And then what I do is I go where the thumb is. Basically, you scratch up the thumb. That's the way of thinking of it. Scratch up the thumb. Go away from the thumb. And then with this finger, go around as if you're working a stitch. Bring the thumb back and drop it. You pull it off. So you go down, scratch up the thumb, go all the way around, put your yarn around the needles, put the loop over the okay, so you scratch up the thumb, put the yarn around the needles, pull the needles through the loop, drop the loop, pull it with your thumb to close the loop. Scratch up the thumb, go and fetch the yarn, bring it back through the loop, drop the loop, use the thumb to close the loop. Scratch up, fetch yarn, bring through loop, drop loop, close loop, scratch up the thumb, fetch the yarn, bring through loop, drop loop, close loop, scratch, fetch, bring back, drop, close, scratch, fetch, go through loop, drop, close, scratch, fetch, back through loop, drop loop, pull it closed, scratch, fetch, through loop, drop loop, close, 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 scratch, fetch, through loop, drop loop, closed, 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 and so on and so on. I should actually have 18 by now. I need 18. What I do is normally I count them by pulling this out, so I tend to make too many. That's how this little guy happened. I made too many, listening to WhatsApp, started knitting, didn't realize what I was doing. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then take off the surplus. My first row is going to be a purl. I call it my base row. It allows me to increase comfortably. I'll purl with the lace tip going into the first stitch. Now this is how I purl. Everyone purls differently. And this yarn is a little bit splitty. Stylecraft Special DK. But I love the colors. I love the finished product from Stylecraft. So splitty or not, I persevere with it. This is how I purl. Like a little sewing machine. Boom, boom. The little head coming up, head going down, head coming up, head going down. My finger just... See, my other fingers do hardly anything. Look at that. This one just literally just goes and fetches the new stitch. Okay. Turn it. Now this is where I used the crochet hook, Tunisian style. Simply because I wanted to see what it would be like. So, first stitch, go in, fetch it, bring it through. I'm going to keep them on there. Next one, fetch it. Now the way I increase is I could increase like that. That'll be easy enough. But the way I increase when I knit is I go underneath and I fetch that loop that's there. And normally I would knit that. So I would put my knitting needle in here and I go and fetch it. It's easy enough. But I wanted to try it with a crochet hook. So crochet the first stitch normally. Pick up the other one underneath and crochet that one, and that's the increase. Crochet the first stitch, go underneath with the lace tip. So that's why it's very handy with the lace tip. So the purl row, remember, I purled it with the lace tip so that I could use it this time. Yarn split, because that lace tip goes underneath, literally fetches that loop. Crochet the first one. I love crocheting and I love mixing crochet and knitting together, so I'm always looking for an excuse to do so. So the pattern, normally I would knit the first stitch, and then I would increase all the way across the row except for the last one. So from 18 stitches, I'd end up with 34 stitches because I had increased on 16 of them. So there was a 16 stitch increase. And that's how I do the base of my little feet for these comfort dolls. Many patterns for comfort dolls, you actually start off with the number of stitches that you want for the doll. In this case, my dolls across are 34 stitches. That's how many there are. I could easily start with that amount. Don't have to increase. I like the way the little feet are tucked in by starting off with less stitches. It does make the first few rows fiddly, because now that I have that small cast on row of only 18 stitches, it becomes quite tight, taut, and that kind of taut. And so it takes a couple of rows for me to actually move away from what is basically a fabric that wants to bend over an arch. Because of course we are creating a fabric, knitted fabric, but fabric nonetheless. So the last stitch is not increased, it's just done like that. So as I said, if I had done it on an ADDI Duett, I could have slipped it across and it's literally knitted it with a different color. I could knit it with the same color because the yarn is on this side, unless I had a separate ball, or I literally cut the yarn and attached it here to knit it. But I thought the little, make little black feet, black shoes, and then started a new color. It would be absolutely perfect. But I don't have an ADDI in that size, so I have to push it across, going over that little hump, and with my needle, using the lace tip, I just take them off the crochet hook. Last one. So you can see with the crochet hook you can actually make a row that literally looks like knitting. It's a little bit different at the back, but that's because it's also been increased. A lace tip, and this is going to be a knit row, a purl row. Just got to find out where my purl stitches are lying, how they're lying. So I don't want to twist them, so I've got to come from that side. Yeah, as you can see, I'm flicking them off and putting them back on as I purl. My mum has a way of purling. She always said I twisted my stitches, but her purl stitches lie on her needle like this. She also continental knits. She has the yarn in the left hand. Well, she doesn't anymore. She stopped knitting about 15 years ago, maybe even more. But I could never imitate her. I was just learning on my own, really, and that's where I learned to purl like a little sewing machine, going up down, up, down. My mother has a much more complicated way of doing it, which I think is the correct way, but I don't know. There's something called combination knitting. Facebook has a group. I belong to them as well. Well, I did. I can't remember if I still do. Every now and then I change Facebook accounts. It's a long story. But there's something called combined knitting. It's where you're mixing all different techniques and you're not actually a straightforward classic member of one group or another, because there are actually quite a few different ways of knitting. They usually have names of either countries or ethnic groups, nationalities, or so I used to call this German knitting when I was little, because at school I was taught what in school was called English knitting. But now that I've actually moved to England, they seem to call it continental knitting. But when I was in France, I didn't see anyone knit the way I did. They were all knitting the English way, so I guess not everybody on the continent does continental knitting. So there we go. It gives extremely tight and compact work. I wouldn't say it's much different from the way that I did increase, but the difference is I didn't have to pull it each time. Pull the yarn, and it just seems to be more comfortable. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the ADDI DUETT and seeing what I can do with it. And also to add skirts. They say one picks up stitches, but I was thinking, so you've got to pick up stitches and then you add the skirt like that. But I was thinking with ADDI DUETT, I would use my crochet hook to basically pick up the stitches via the crochet, and then I'd automatically have all my stitches on here, and I could even pick up the first row. Could actually be a half double crochet or something like that. It doesn't have to be single crochet, but I can then knit them off there. So I'm looking really forward to that. Obviously the skirt, they say it's added on. I have done it before, but it was about 2 years ago. 2019, I made little Chinese girls from the Esther Breathwaite patterns. But I remember I was picking up. So I can't remember how Esther says you got to do it. I think maybe just literally she was saying picking up the stitches. I don't know how she does it. Such a long time ago. But as I said, with a crochet hook, I'd literally go through, fetch the yarn, bring it through, and I've got a loop on here. Go through the next one. I'll go through obviously through 2, so I'd go through it maybe. It was not obvious, but I'd probably go through 2. Bring it through. And if I make a half double crochet, I'd first put the yarn around that, and then just to get away from this work, so the first row is actually standing a bit off. But now I'm getting sidetracked. But there's so many exciting things one can do if one has a selection of tools. Thank you very much for watching, and I don't have to show you anymore because it is all just stocking stitch. I count 18, so I won't say 18 rows. There are 18 little V's, so just literally count all the way up. There'll be 17 plus 1 on the needle, and this is 12, I believe it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 12. Always count the one on the needle if you're counting colors, because remember, as soon as you've knitted the next one, that color is now going to become part of the pattern. So don't forget to count the one on the needle. And then that's 18, 17, 18. But yeah, this, how many, these ones are all different. This one has a smaller face. I was following the amount of stitches that Esther suggested, Esther Brathwaite. That's her kitty called Kitty Friend. She puts these plaits in some of hers. The Kitty Friend doesn't have that here. She has a striped jacket, but I did that. And this is just basically I crocheted two strands together, just to give his little jersey a nice little collar. But I have a video on that. It's a 2-hour video on how to sew up the Kitty Friend. And bigger head. And also I add loops so they can be suspended. But I'm hopefully going to add quite a few videos to my playlist for the kitty, because I'm really enjoying it. So hopefully there'll be quite a few videos on that. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, you want to see my little aliens? There's also tons of videos on aliens. Got tons of videos of aliens. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day. Bye for now.